Hello dear learners, let us continue our discussion on the cross-sector collaboration design and implementation framework. In the previous session, we discussed about the general antecedent conditions and initial drivers and mechanisms for cross-sector collaboration. In this session, we will focus on collaborative processes and collaborative structures. The authors highlighted the role of collaborative processes and collaborative structures and discuss the various interactions between the two. In terms of mentioning leadership, governance, technology, capacity and competencies. So, we will look into all these aspects one by one, starting from the collaborative processes. Now, first among the collaborative processes, as the author mentioned, is the element of trust and commitment. Very important. Now, this trust in this regard takes care of the following aspects. Number one, it comprises of the interpersonal behavior, meaning the level of trust among the members of the partnering organizations. So, it is a very important process for the collaboration. It also comprises of the level of confidence in the competencies in the organizations, right? How much is the confidence is there in terms of the competencies between the collaborating partner? It can be inferred from this particular idea that more is the level of confidence in the competency, right, more the level of trust between the organizational partners, because it directly relates to the performance, right, and of course the performance in terms of success of the collaborations, because the organization considered themselves as more competent and thus the higher level of trust between them. And it is an ongoing activity because it requires for performance outcomes for the collaboration, right. So, you have to demonstrate, like, and also work for enhancing the trust between the organizations. But the question here is how organizations in collaboration they build trust. Okay, and the literature highlight that the trust can be built by collaborating organizations by doing what? They can actually share information with each other in terms of resource sharing. They can keep on demonstrating their competency, their ability and capacity to look into the problems and solve the problems, or address the issues at hand. It can also be inferred out from the goodwill and good intentions of the partners, following through commitments and keeping the promises and the common bond. Now, if the organizational partners, they fail to follow through commitments and they prioritize one's own agenda over the other partner in the collaboration, it can have detrimental effects or have negative consequences such as lower level of trust among the partners and hence performance issues and the collaboration dissolution. Within the collaborative processes, the next important process which is highlighted is the process of communication. Now, mechanism for how communication shall take place should be given higher priority. We discuss about this also in the mechanisms. Since communication act as the basis for development of trust between the partners in collaboration, literature suggests that most of these activities related to communication should be face to face. So, if these happens, there is a lesser chances of the misunderstandings between the partners, and they can clarify things in a shorter span of time and can focus on the work coordination. The authors Bryson and colleagues further mentioned importance of internal and external legitimacy depending upon organization environment. We will talk about the concept of legitimacy. What does it mean? Focus should be on using structures, processes and strategies to build legitimacies, something which is considered to be correct and apt within the collaboration network and between the partners. Let us understand it with the help of an example. If public and private organizations are collaborating, these organizations will have different institutional environment. We have already talked about this. Their institutional environment is different, institutional logics are different. Now, private organizations focus on structures which are non-hierarchical, and these structures may not be seen as legitimate externally by the member who focus on bureaucracy for functioning. You see, this is a classic contrast. private organizations, they believe in more flatter structures, but in the public organizations, we have seen more taller structures. So one aspect is, one thing which is considered legitimate in one particular context might not be considered legitimate externally by the other partner. Now, author highlight two different types of internal legitimacy. One is procedural, another is cognitive legitimacy. With respect to procedural legitimacy, the authors highlighted how decision making shall take place, whether parties will have fair chance to have their say in decision making process. So when you're talking about procedures, what procedures are to put in place, and they should be considered legitimates by the partners in the collaboration, it is very, very important. One of the examples they have mentioned is about how the participation from the partner should take place, whether they will have much more authority in participating in the decision making process or not, is a part of procedural legitimacy. Another one is cognitive legitimacy. It includes the aspect of mutual understanding between the partners, meaning trust, and of course recognition of interdependence among the collaboration partners. So since it is cognitive, it is more related to the perception among the partner with respect to mutual understanding between them in terms of recognition of interdependence among the collaborating partners. Finally, around the discussion on collaborative process, collaborative planning holds significant importance, which is both formal as well as emergent planning. Authors highlight two different approaches to this. One is deliberate or formal planning approach, other one is emergent approach. Now, if you look at the formal planning approach relates to the prior articulation of the goals, missions, objectives, roles and responsibilities, stages and phases of design and implementation. It is prior, we have set when we begin the collaboration and collaborating effort, everything is well thought of in terms of the goals, mission, objectives, phases of design and implementation, including roles and responsibility of the partners. Emergent planning, on the other hand, that it says that the clear understanding of the goals, missions, design and stages will emerge through the continuous communication between the partners in the collaboration. So we may not be having very clear about the idea about the goals and the processes and the design and the phases in the beginning. So this will emerge. So how it will emerge? It will emerge from the various communication and the transactions and the conversation that are happening between the partners, and this tend to change depending upon how the situations will change. Now, literature argued that the collaborative planning should focus on attention to the stakeholders, who are the participants in the collaboration, for whom the collaboration is undertaken, clear understanding of the problems, and developing variety of solutions. It's very, very important. Next element in the framework is the collaboration structures, right? Now, authors mention that both collaboration processes and structures work closely, so one can expect a lot of overlaps between them. And to do this, we will also look at various intersections between the two in times to come. Now, various aspects of collaboration influence structures. Okay, we talked about the processes, now we talk about the structure. First influence on the structures come from how partnering organizations comes from how they self-organize into specific particular structure depending upon how partners decide to manage their work following norms and rules or practices of the engagement. So see, now planning is done. Now the work is to be coordinated. Now work will include many tasks and the activities. Now you have to put some structure in place to find out what norms, what guidelines, what rules and practices of engagement will be taken into consideration and will be framed to take care of the work of collaboration and collaborative effort. Component of complexity also influence the structure to become more dynamic. So we talked about the complexity of COVID-19 pandemic also. So the structure will take a shape depending upon the nature of task at the hand for the collaboration. More complex tasks will require a different kind of structures to deal with. Now, the structure can be formulated or changed over a period of time as the collaboration works keep on going, depending upon multiplicity of the goals, changing membership. Remember, we talked about the emerging planning phase, that some of the things will become more clearer to the members of the partnering organization as they continue to work together for a long period of time, and some things keep on changing. There will be more goals added, more goals get prioritized, performance indicators might change, people keep on shifting, some people joining and leaving the organization, right? Finally, last element in the collaborative structures relate to effective management of the tensions. We talked about the structural ambidexterity. Now, in terms of structure, what priority is to be given? The partners are giving priority to what? We have to balance it. Whether the organizing partners are giving importance to stability or change. Yes, ambidextrity means you have to balance, striking a balance between the how these things will take place in terms of priority, balancing stability versus change. Are the organization looking for stability or they are looking for change? Formal networks versus informal networks, another important striking balance that they have to decide. Finally, existing power structure versus involuntary power sharing. How they will want to strike a balance between the things there is another important element of the collaborating structures, right? Because in structures we have to give it a shape in terms of how the work is to be completed and how the work is to be coordinated. Now, the important discussion is on understanding the intersections of processes and structures. Let us first understand and discuss the role of leadership, leadership practices and skills. So, we are going to talk about first leadership, skills, practices and leadership itself. Remember, we talk about the concept of sponsors and champions and also facilitators. Very important. It says once the collaboration is undertaken and collaborating effort is on, involvement of sponsors and champions is very, very important. Who are the sponsors? Sponsors are the people who have authority to take some kind of decisions with respect to collaboration and collaborative effort. Okay. Champions are the people, champions are the people who, by making use of their informal authority, engage partners in the collaborative work. Okay, championship from the people who, by the use of their informal authority, they might not be the people who have positional authority, but by the making use of their authority in terms of expertise, knowledge or maybe their reputation, they can make use of their ability, this leadership skill, to engage partners in the collaborative work. Now, role of champions as collaborative capacity builders by the use of authority or expertise or through reputation in networks play a key role in solving and addressing problems in the network. Okay. Now, it is further important that leaders with their skills should deal with uncertainty. We're talking about the intersection between structures and the processes, and leadership has to play a great role. So, they need to deal with uncertainty with their skills, build trusting relationships, influence people out of their formal authority to ensure that collaboration continue to sustain and perform to achieve objective for which it was initiated. So, the collaboration happening is one thing. Collaboration to sustain requires strong leadership effort. The another important aspect of intersection highlighted by the author is the concept of governance. Here, the meaning of governance relates to governance of collaboration by structures and processes for collective decision making. How governance should take place by following the structures and processes. These include directing, coordinating and allocating resources for collaboration. Somebody has to govern. So, governance of collaboration emerge from, you see that governance is emergent, it is dynamic and it is contingent. Things can change when the collaborating effort is on, things can change. So, it emerged from what? It emerged from the interactions, between the partners in the network, okay, communication and exchanges. So that's why we talk about this governance as emergent, dynamic and contingent. Now these exchanges and communication and the interaction, they lead to the development of norms, values and social mechanism that coordinate and monitor the activities. See, when two collaborating partners are coming to collaborate with each other to solve some problems, through interactions and communication, new norms of work will develop. That's why we say that no, emergent, dynamic and contingent, new norms will develop, which will then govern how the activities is to take place, how to coordinate and monitor the activities. Next, the influence of external factors on collaborative governance has been highlighted. For example, government mandates can result in hierarchical governance structure, resulting in one power having more authority over the other. Let's say it's the government organization and it requires, the mandate requires that it should be a hierarchical governance structure where people at multiple levels are involved in governing the activities of the collaboration, then it should be so. But it has influence on how one party can have advantage over the other. Prior relationships, if positive, can result in collaboration governance structures based on trust. We have talked about this thing. Governance structures and processes can take place different shapes depending upon if there are some kind of trusting relationship between the partners already in the form of informal mechanisms, or can be purely based on the formal structure. I've just discussed about the government mandates in terms of following the hierarchical structures. Another important consideration for collaborative governance is to manage the paradoxical tensions. Control versus trust. Meaning that if one party will have more advantage over the other in terms of, they are more powerful than the other, how it will be taken care of. Congruent versus divergent goals. These are all our paradoxical tension which needs to be taken into consideration. Finally, inclusivity versus efficiency. Technology is the another important and the crucial aspect of intersection between processes and structure. Now, technology is something which has embedded in the social systems of the organization. So you see that without technology, you cannot imagine an organizational functioning, right? Technology plays a great role. It is an enabler for the functioning of the organization. So it has embedded in the social system of the organization. Technology has a greater impact on and facilitate the collaborative work. Technology as the relationship builder, according to authors, influence people to network, integrate across boundary within or outside their agency, right? Now, if you imagine that, a situation in the banks when the technology was not there, all the work was used to, be done following manual work. But we can't have a situation, think of a situation like that when we have so much complexity, number of customer increasing, number of banks. Without technology, it is becoming very, very difficult to manage. So in this context, we can saying that technology plays a greater role and it has actually embedded in the system in such a way that one cannot think of working in the organization without the technological support. So these are the interaction that has been highlighted by the authors in the context. Finally, in understanding interactions, authors highlighted the role of capacity and competency. Collaborative capacity and competencies that lead to productive and successful collaboration when collaborating partners have specific attitudes, competencies and capacities. Okay, let us look at some of the examples of these attitudes. In terms of capacity and competencies, we are going to talk about attitudes, competencies and capacities. In terms of attitudes, it includes the interpersonal understanding between the members of the partnering organizations, concern for good, openness for collaborations. These are the attitudinal aspects of the capacity and competency. Then competencies, ability to work in networks, strategic planning, engaging stakeholders. It is to do with more demonstration of the skills that one have to deal with the ability of work and deal with the various contingencies in the network. Finally, capacity, past experience of working in collaboration and working on some specific issues, it can lead to increase in or a source of collaborative capacity. So, in terms of capacity and competencies, attitudes are very, very important. Competencies and capacity and source of capacity, collaborative capacity, has been highlighted as important interactions between collaborative processes and structures. Next, the authors discussed the role of endemic conflicts and tension as another important element in the framework for designing and implementing cross-sector collaborations. Let us discuss about these conflict and tension. Now, whenever there is an interdependence there between the organizations, exists between the partners in collaboration, and there are multi-organizational arrangement, the conflict and tensions influence the working in the organizations. Now, we need to see that what are the sources of this conflict and tensions. They are power imbalances, institutional logics, autonomy versus interdependence, stability versus flexibility, internal versus external legitimacy, right? These are the things which we are going to discuss in little more detail. There are multiple institutional logics and there are shocks. Conflicts and tensions arise because of different aims and expectations that organization in the network bring in the collaboration. Okay. Now, conflict arises because difficult ways of working, different views about strategies, plans and activities. Okay. Now, the difference in the status of organization can also result in power imbalances and hence conflict. Now, how the status differences can happen in the collaboration? It can be because of the organizational size. One organization bigger in size than the other may have potential advantage over the other. Funding can be another indicator for power imbalance. One organizing partner, collaborating partner bringing in more funding, and of course, the reputation of an organization. So, these are some of the aspects which can lead to the power imbalances between the organizing partners. Now, what to do in case of conflicts and tension? There are conflicts and tensions. If they are not managed well, it can lead to the consequences, negative consequences, which are not going to be good for organizations. Now, willingness of the collaborative partners to look into the alternatives to address the problems and issues at hand is important factor in effective conflict management. Now, when conflict is there, they have to be managed really well. Effective conflict management, according to literature, use the regular meetings for raising and resolving issues. Open communication. Sometimes meeting need to also be called depending upon the situation and deal with the issues and problems related to conflicts. Okay, so effective conflict management require the regular meetings amongst the members of the partnering organization to resolve the issues as and when they arise. Now, let us now focus on discussion related to power imbalances, which is important aspect of endemic conflicts and tension. In case of collaboration and partnership, some partners will have more power in comparison to another. For example, we discussed about the public and private partnership. In this case, public organizations have more power and authority as they represent public. Private partner can have power in terms of expertise and knowledge in technology. So, what is required? Required is that the partnering organizations to work with these power differences and find the ways either to leverage the strength of each other. Let's say if the public organization will have more power, private can leverage that, and public organization can leverage the power of the private sector organization in terms of expertise and knowledge. If they cannot leverage the strength, they try to minimize the impact of these differences, imbalances, so that it should not impact the collaborative effort and success of collaboration. Another important aspect of the collaboration effort and that relates to endemic conflicts and tensions relates to the shocks. Now, these shocks can affect the relationship among partners, resources, or even purpose of the collaboration. But what are these shocks? From where these shocks comes and emerge? These shocks include change in the priorities of the funding agencies. Okay, so if it comes in, the plan for which or the objective for which the collaboration has undertaken, it will actually influence and impact it much. Then there could be political shifts, there could be change in the political authority, there can be shifting of members. Earlier people who were champions and sponsors, they are no longer with the collaboration, the other people joined, so their priority might change. Collaboration may confront controversies or may caught up in the scandals. So these are some of the shocks which are leading to the conflicts and tension amongst the cross-sector partners. Institutional logics we have discussed, so I am not going to review them in little more detail. I am just going to briefly review it here. Institutional logics, are the historical patterns, informal and formal rules, symbols, etc., which provide organization, direction, and guidance for their day-to-day working. Right? Different organizations have different institutional logic, as we have already discussed, which they consider legitimate. But legitimacy of one institutional logic, one's own institutional logic, doesn't mean that it is considered legitimate by others also, especially while evaluating the legitimacy following different logic. So this can be dealt by engaging and communicating with stakeholder to build external legitimacy. Now the same can also be dealt by promoting learning and build internal trust. Finally, the authors included accountability and outcomes as important elements of proposed framework. The authors describe 4 categories of accountabilities and outcomes. Let us consider them each one by one. So first of all, we will talk about public value creation. Creation of public value is of utmost priority for any cross-sector collaboration. So the idea behind cross-sector the partnership and collaboration is to take care of some of the social concern, addressing some of the social issue. The reason being is very simple, that one organization may not have all the resources and expertise, and only solution provided by the network can help in creating the public value, right? Now, in terms of the collaboration, literature highlighted that the partnership between government organizations seems to have increased effectiveness. Idea is their goals are more congruent, and efficiency and equity will also be higher if the partnership is between the government organization. It may be because of the same priorities for creating value for public and ensuring welfare of the community. Now, this aspect of effectiveness, efficiency and equity in collaboration between government organization are attributed to. Why is it so? It is attributed to specialized expertise available with the government agencies, their legal power, public service motto, their motto of providing the public service, and goal alignment and mutual trust. So this is the first value creation. So in terms of the outcomes, that creating value for the public through cross-sector collaborations. In terms of outcomes, the authors, Bryson and colleagues, discuss it at the 3 different levels: immediate, intermediate, and long-term outcomes. Now, if you look at the immediate effects or immediate outcomes of the cross-sector collaboration, they are also sometimes called as the author mentioned, first-order outcomes. First-order outcomes of cross-sector collaborations, which directly result from the collaboration process. Now, what are the examples of this thing? The immediate outcomes include intellectual capital, social capital, and high quality agreements between the organizing partners in the collaboration, and creative and innovation strategy. Because why they are called as first order, but they immediate result from the collaboration process, which ultimately result in social and intellectual capital, creative and innovative strategies to solve the problems, and high quality agreements between the partners. Then comes the intermediate outcomes. Intermediate outcomes, they actually stems from the various process that occur during the implementation. So implementation is happening, so various processes are to be followed. So in this case, what happens is, when the implementation is taking place and various processes are occurring, some outcomes are like new partnerships formed. in terms of intermediate outcomes, joint learning and actions, okay, agreement implementation, what they have agreed on, now they are implementing through the processes, so this is another intermediate outcome. New facilities being created, okay, and then change in the practices and the perceptions. Now you see that when they are conversing, when they are communicating with each other time and again, there is also some kind of perception change happening between the partners. In the beginning, they might hold some other perception about others in the context. When they start conversing, communicating with each other, their perception, and there is a change in the practices also, because there is a change in perception. Now, long-term effects in this case, they include, now once they are working with them for a long term, one can see reduce or reduction in the level of conflict. In the beginning phase, conflicts will be much more because parties would not know much about each other. But as they grow, as they work together following various processes and structures, they come to know about each other, their perception gets changed, and so the level of the conflict can also go down. Then new norms are getting developed for the functioning of the partnership. For what? For addressing the problems. These are some of the important long-term outcomes highlighted in the framework. Another important outcome that they have talked about is resilience and reassessment learning. We discussed about that in terms of long-term impact. The ongoing learning is very important for the success of collaborations, because it makes the partnership prepared, ready to confront various situations which they have not anticipated before. But ongoing learning, it actually relates to and results from the emergent planning that we have discussed. Right? During the process of emergent planning means something which emerges from the continuous interactions and communication between the partners. So for that to happen, learning should take place, which will give them the idea that how they should bring in changes in the goals, in the roles and responsibilities, various structures and the processes, right? It includes learning about working styles and working together. It is of the high importance when the goals and performance are not clear. Goals and performance indicators are not clear in the beginning, and ongoing learning is an important mechanism that can lead to bring clarity about the goals, and on the basis of which indicators performance of collaboration will be evaluated. And then in terms of complex accountabilities, accountability is a complex issue. It is very unclear about to whom the collaborative is accountable, to whom the collaboration is accountable. Multiple and competing stakeholders' perception lead to confusion about defining results and outcomes. Accountability can be for either inputs or processes or outputs or outcomes. For instance, literature highlighted that public-private partnership will have accountability in terms of allocation of risk. For the public organization, allocating risk to private organization, or the otherwise, cost and benefits, expertise and performance management. In terms of informal accountability, it emphasizes the link between shared norms and focus on facilitative behaviors through informal rewards and sanctions. This is the final, the aspect which the authors have talked about in terms of accountabilities and outcomes. So if you look into the framework that we have seen on the very beginning of this discussion, general antecedent conditions leading to the initial conditions and drivers and linking mechanisms, leading to the creation of collaborative processes and the structures and the intersection between the two, and then endemic conflicts and tensions, accountabilities and outcomes. Very interesting framework to understand the concept of cross-sector collaborations. It is highly required that the learners go through this particular article and refer to the another empirical work studies who have done some work on this particular framework. Especially, I encourage PhD research scholars to look into this paper. It can give them some interesting ideas about working on a problem if they are from the public management research area. It will be very interesting to work on some of these aspects which have author highlighted in terms of propositions. With this, we have come to the final section of this particular module. We will discuss about another interesting work of Selsky and Parker, which was published in Journal of Management Study, and the work is entitled as Cross-Sector Partnership to Address Social Issues, Challenges to Theory and Practice. We will quickly review this and we'll conclude the discussion here. The focus will be on the following. First, I will discuss about the various platforms and as discussed in the article by authors to examine cross-sector partnership to address social issues. Second, I will discuss about the various types of cross-sector partnership. The authors Selsky and Parker termed these types as arena, and I have highlighted and described 4 different arenas. So, I will discuss about all these arena and also give you examples. Let's first of all quickly look at the platform for examining the cross-sector partnership. 3 platforms have been discussed: resource dependence platform, social issues platform and the social sector platform. Resource dependency platform we have discussed when we discussed about the reasons for the organizations to collaborate. About resource dependency, we have seen in the mechanisms, we have seen in the reasons about this thing, that why organizations collaborate, because they need to meet their organizational need and solve organizational problems. So, they depend upon other organizations for resources because they lack critical competencies. So, they look for those competencies if available in the other organizations in the network. Their environment are more certain. So, to reduce the level of uncertainty, they collaborate with the other organization in the network depending upon the resource dependence platform. And sometimes organizations, they collaborate with the others to gain competitive advantage. This specifically is coming from literature of strategic management, that if you want to attain competitive advantage, you collaborate with other organizations which are going to give you some resource which is good for you and beneficial for you. The social issues platform. This complex social and public issues require organizations to contribute towards addressing the issues. Now, the public, when they evaluate the functioning of the organization, there are gaps in the expectations of public with respect to expectation from a policy and program and its actual performance. It has then this particular gap between the expectation and the actual performance has led to a significant pressure on the organizations to deal with these issues and address this. So, there is a pressure on the government, business and not-profit organization to collaborate and address these social issues. Now, in addition to this, external pressure can also be from the interest groups, which has also led to the formation of these collaboration, right? Now these 2 platforms which we have discussed are based on the organizational literature, wherein resource dependence platform, in case of resource dependence platform, organization collaborate voluntarily to serve their own interests, such as acquisition of resources or sometime to address the social issues. In case of social issues platform, the collaboration happen to address a specific social cause. Now, this third important platform which has been discussed, it's a societal sector platform. The main argument presented in the paper by Selsky and Parker is that for collaboration under this platform is that the boundaries between government, business and not-for-profit organizations are blurring and they are intertwined with others. Now, this blurring of organizational boundary is a result of one organization taking over the role of another organization. Example, government contracting out services to not-profit or business organizations. Now, this further will lead to the hybrid form of governance. Multiple stakeholders, parties are involved in taking care of social service or some kind of policy implementation or public service delivery. So, number of parties which are involved, they will take care of the governance issues also. So, it will take into consideration the hybrid forms of the governance. Factors like privatization, lack of public confidence in the government also returns in other organizations like business and non-profit to provide for goods and services. So social partnership platform, it examines the feature of main societal sectors such as values, motivations and needs of operation. Okay, so organization learning through participation is also important as it transforms actors in such a way that even after end of the participation, organizations find new ways of thinking about the functioning, right? Once they start working with each other, it's not that when they are working on some social cause only then their partnership exists. So their partnership can go beyond. Even after the end of the partnership, they continue to learn the ways, finding out new ways of thinking about the functioning of their own organization. Sometimes the organization learn from each other and wanting to replicate what other organizations are doing in terms of best practices. So in terms of learning, it also in the case when organizations start adapting to the practices which are successful in their organization can also be applicable in their own context. That's another important part of the learning here. Finally, the author discussed about the various arenas and they have talked about 4 different kind of arenas. I will review them one by one and then we will conclude the discussion. Arena 1 is the cross-sector partnership between business and non-profit organizations. It encompasses social issues and causes. And the example of these partnerships include issues related to environment and economic development, including health and education. So business and non-profit organizations, they are partnering with each other to take care of the issues which are related to health, education, environment and economic development. Another cross-sector partnership comes under the arena 2, which is the partnership between businesses and the governments. For example, public-private partnership with a direct focus on social causes and issues. And the example of this kind of partnership can include a partnership for infrastructure development, public services including water, electricity, because they have important social implications. Arena 3, as per the authors, is the partnership between governments and non-profit organizations. For example, government contracting out the public service to non-profit organizations. Examples include concentrate on job development and welfare. Okay. Finally, the arena 4 is the partnership between all the 3 actors: businesses, non-profits, organizations and the government. It focuses on large-scale national and international projects, and the focus and emphasis of this arena partnership between all the 3 sectors is on economic and community development, social services, environmental concern and health. The citation of this particular paper from which the content has been taken is cited on the slide here as source number 1, published in Journal of Management. I suggest the learners to go through the article to find out more about this particular cross-sector partnership and how the formation and mechanisms and outcomes are impacted depending upon where and how the partnership is taking place. So with this, we have come to the conclusion of the module 11 on public management through collaborations. We have covered the reform of the public organizations in the form of NPM reforms, advantages and disadvantages. We also talked about how disadvantages has led to the post-NPM reforms, and we have reviewed the objectives of post-NPM reforms in the form of new public value management, new public service, hybrid form of governance and so on and so forth. Then we talked about the collaboration, the importance of collaboration, meaning of collaboration. We have discussed various examples of partnerships. Then we discussed the framework on cross-sector partnership design and implementation framework by Bryson, Crosby and Stone, and we concluded the discussion with the cross-sector partnership of the discussion on the paper of cross-sector partnership to address the social issues by Selsky and Parker.